than those who could only afford to maybe have gone to poorly resourced state schools for their education. Now, at times, the ones who are more well-educated and therefore have an edge, at times they even grow up believing that they are more deserving than their counterparts that have attended poorly resourced public schools. Another example that has an important impact on inequalities is what we also have become to regard as success in our society. Today we live in a world that encourages the acquisition of material wealth. We have become so addicted to believing that more is always success. More means success. The bigger the better. Today what we consume is no longer to fulfill what really we regard as our basic needs, but to prove to others that we are successful, to prove that we have arrived, as sometimes we say. Now, this phenomenon is reinforced by our adoration of material wealth. We mostly look up to those who have accumulated so much wealth to the point where they don't have much use for it. Those are the ones who become our role models. We want to be like them. And probably there are good reasons why we may want to be that. Now, in order for us to satisfy our addiction for excessive material wealth, we adopt strategies that are exclusive in nature, strategies that exacerbate inequality. We refuse to share with those who have less than us, justifying our position that we deserve what we have and they deserve what they don't have. For example, if I'm an employer, maybe a bad employer, I devise measures to pay my employees the minimum wage possible in order for me to maximize my profit. We deny other economic opportunities and only take care of those closest to us, maybe my friends, maybe my closest family members. And therefore, those are real reasons where we have to think about and how we should be concerned about inequality in our society. Second point is really to do with the corruption and how it impacts on inequality. And I want to start off by saying corruption, or even I think the perception of corruption. Sometimes we all say, well, we're not corrupt, but maybe just a perception. But for me, corruption, or just a perception of it, can have a negative effect on our socio-economic development, and therefore, eventually on inequality. While we in Namibia ranks favorably on regional and also on international indices, such as the Transparency International's Corruption Perception Index, I think challenges of corruption still remain. And why is it bad, corruption? Why is it bad? It is bad because it has potential to undermine our ability and capacity to, for example, to collect tax from those who need to pay their taxes. When taxpayers evade and avoid their responsibility to pay taxes, this is certainly a form of corruption, and it has an adverse effect on the government's ability to provide social services to citizens. It diminishes the government's ability to fund programs aimed at poverty alleviation, for example. Not only is corruption bad for economic growth and enterprises, it's also bad for ordinary citizens, especially the poor and the most vulnerable. Now, in my view, the failure of good governance necessarily leads to corruption. It's also my contention that corruption is usually as a result of ethical leadership. A leadership that is more altruistic in its outlook as opposed to the one is more self-seeking. And ethical leaders are those who will always aspire to leave things in a better shape than they found them. And while it is necessary to have anti-corruption laws, like we all have anti-corruption laws in our countries, in Namibia we do have them, it has been proven that laws in themselves do not prevent corruption. All what laws can do, and what hopefully will do, is to catch those who maybe are corrupt. However, with ethical leadership, whether in government, private sector, or civil societies, you are assured of the absence of corruption, and you are therefore likely to be effective in addressing inequality. It is therefore important that we make ethical and principled leadership a core issue in our choice of our leaders, be in the private sector or in the public sector. I want to quote the American science fiction Octavia Butler, who says this about leaders. He says, and I quote, "Choose your leaders with wisdom and forethought. To be led by a coward is to be controlled by all that the coward fears. To be led by a fool is to be led by the opportunist who controls the fool. To be led by a thief is to offer up your most precious treasures to be stolen. To be led by a liar is to ask to be told lies. To be led by a tyrant is to sell yourselves and those you love into slavery." End of quote. It is also important, I think, for us to ask ourselves the question as to what causes leaders to go astray, and therefore maybe not managing corruption and therefore not fighting inequality in society. Does it mean that those leaders that turn out to be unethical are necessarily bad people? And they are bad people even before they became leaders? Or did something happen to them in between? For example, we have heard of some famous names, either in the corporate world or in the world of politics, names of people who fell from grace because of corruption. We know of iconic names that were admired, and during their heydays, every corporate leader or political leaders wanted just to be like them. They were admired, they were held in awe, and they follow. And when you follow the stories of all of those, invariably you will find that the main cause of their leadership, of the troubles in leadership, is that they lost their moral compass. And maybe you may ask, and why do leaders lose their moral compass? For me, there are a number of reasons why leaders lose their moral compass. The thing is that the more successful you become as a leader, the more temptations will surely come your way. As a leader in business or in public service, there will always be those who would want to tempt you to do the wrong things. There will always be those who will offer you inducements in exchange for what seems, at the time when it's offered, it seems to be a very career-enhancing opportunity, and therefore everybody will want to grab that. It is therefore important as leaders to always be on the outlook for what could turn out to be career-ending rather than career-enhancing. Another aspect of ethical leadership is that of examining my motive of wanting to be a leader. I believe there are wrong reasons why someone may want to be a leader, and I also think there are right reasons to become a leader. It is therefore very important to ask myself the question, why do I want to become a leader, and therefore responsible for societal ills? Do I want to be the CEO of a company or the Minister of Mines and Energy like I am today, because of the prestige that accompanies the leadership position? And we all know that when you are the CEO or the ministers, most people tend to be very polite to you. I hope you're all polite to me. They even forget that you even have a name. and they only call you either sir or they call you honourable. They will stand up when you enter the room, except when I did enter the room, nobody stood up. They will insist on carrying your bag even when your bag is empty. And it rather feels invigorating when that happens to you as a leader. Now, if these are the most important reasons why I want to become a minister, why you want to become the leader, then you are at risk of losing your moral compass, and more often than not, the result is likely to be personal devastation. But it can be avoided if you stay grounded, if you continuously strive to be an ethical leader. Now, there are also cases where successful leaders fell from grace, not because they did something wrong, not because they were corrupt. These are leaders who, for example, year in, year out, might have delivered great results, companies where the CEO really delivered, made their shareholders wealth, political leaders who won elections with huge margins, in the process making their parties a symbol of success. In the process, such leaders became famous, they received accolades, and they become sought after keynote speakers at important events. Unfortunately for some leaders who have become successful, or maybe too successful, the success becomes an end in itself. They start to desire more and more, in the process becoming addicted to their prestige and the fame they have obtained. And when that happens, unfortunately, such leaders start to believe that they are the Alpha and Omega and nothing can happen without them. So the challenge to all leaders really will be to master the necessary self-discipline to always do what is right and to do so even when it's not popular to do. And also to do so irrespective of the consequence. And I can tell you that it's not easy and it requires great courage, but it's what it takes if you really want to be a leader, want to leave a lasting positive energy. I'm coming to an end, Carlos. I say I will be brief. I therefore would like to conclude my remarks that I am convinced that we as Namibians certainly can do better and do more in addressing inequality in our society. Surely we can, because there are a lot of things that we have been doing over the last 28 years where we have proven that even when things are difficult, we can prevail, and therefore inequality can still be addressed.